It was the night of October 14th, 2026, in Istanbul, Turkey. Rain fell over the city in long silver lines. The Bosphorus was wrapped in mist, and the streets shone under red brake lights and pale hospital glow. Rising above the wet skyline stood Ravenna Memorial Hospital, a place known for saving lives, restoring hope, and carrying the kind of reputation that made people trust it without question. From the outside, it looked flawless. Inside, something was rotting. That night, a young resident named Dr. Ayhan Qureshi was finishing his rounds. He was 28, intelligent, sincere, and still young enough to believe that medicine was sacred. He walked through the residence corridor with a stack of files in his hand, moving through the silence of the night shift, where everything felt unnaturally controlled. There were soft footsteps, distant monitor beeps, elevator hums, and muffled announcements. It was the ordinary sound of a hospital after midnight. Then Ayhan heard voices. He slowed near a restricted consultation room. The door was not fully shut, and two voices drifted through the narrow opening. One was cold and precise. The other was calm in a way that felt more dangerous. Ayhan stepped closer and listened. Inside the room stood Dr. Adrian Vale, the hospital's most admired transplant surgeon, and Dr. Mira Seth, the chief anesthesiologist. Vale's name carried prestige. Patients trusted him. The media praised him. Donors funded the hospital because of him. He was the polished face of Ravenna Memorial. Beside him stood Mira Seth, sharp, emotionless, and impossible to read. Ayhan heard Mira say that the donor file was incomplete. Vale answered calmly, telling her to complete it. Mira reminded him that the patient was not legally cleared. Vale replied that by midnight he would be. Ayhan froze. Then Mira asked about the family. Vale said with chilling ease that families understood words like complication, but they panicked at words like procedure. Ayhan felt something cold pass through him. Mira then asked what would happen if the resident who reviewed the chart noticed the irregularities. Vale gave a faint smile and said that residents saw many things, but rarely understood what they were seeing. At that moment, Ayhan shifted his weight. His elbow hit a metal trolley. The sound was small, just a sharp metallic clink, but in the silence, it felt deafening. The voices stopped. Ayhan's heart slammed in his chest. The door handle moved. In one quick motion, he stepped away and pretended to study a chart on the wall. The door opened behind him. Mira Seth looked at him first. Her expression was calm, almost pleasant. Then Adrian Vale stepped out beside her and let his eyes settle on Ayhan's badge. Mira asked if it had been a long night. Ayhan answered that he'd been doing ICU rounds. Vale looked at him for a second too long, then said in a smooth, almost fatherly tone, "Good doctors ask the right questions. Great doctors know which questions not to ask." Then he placed a hand lightly on Ayhan's shoulder and walked away. Ayhan did not move until both of them were gone. He knew that had not been advice. It had been a warning. A few minutes later, Ayhan went straight to the ICU terminal and opened the chart of a patient named Yusuf Demir, a 24-year-old man who had been admitted after a motorcycle accident. Earlier that evening, Yusuf had been stable. His injuries were serious, but survivable. Ayhan himself had reviewed the file. Now the chart had changed. It showed emergency sedation, neurological decline, urgent transplant coordination, and family consent pending. Ayhan stared at the screen. Something was wrong. He checked the timestamps. One entry had been logged before the test result it referenced even existed. Another had been altered and re-signed under a different ED. He looked through the glass at Yusuf lying unconscious on the bed. There were fresh prep marks on the body that did not belong there for a normal ICU patient. Ayan whispered to himself that this was wrong. Then he checked the digital access log. The file had been opened from ICU, from administration, and from a surgical terminal in sub-level Wing B. Wing B had been shut down years ago. That was the moment suspicion became fear. Ayan left the ICU and pushed open the stairwell door. Inside, the concrete walls trapped every sound. The emergency light was dim. His hands were shaking as he took out his phone. He scrolled to one name. Mehdi? He called. After 3 rings, a calm voice answered. Far away, standing near dark water and heavy wind, Mehdi listened in silence. Ayan told him that something terrible was happening at the hospital. Mehdi asked only one question. Do you think that, or do you know it? Ayan closed his eyes and answered honestly. He said he had overheard 2 senior doctors talking about changing a donor file. He said a stable patient had suddenly been marked for transplant coordination. He said the records were wrong, the times did not match, and there was activity in an old surgical wing that was supposed to be shut down. Mehdi did not sound surprised. He asked for the hospital name. Ayan told him. Ravenna Memorial, Istanbul. Mehdi asked which departments were involved. Ayan said ICU, administration, and a sub-level surgical terminal that should not even be active. Then Mehdi asked a strange question. He asked if there had been any unusual smell in the lower corridors. Diesel, solvent, old generator exhaust. Ayan paused, then remembered the smell near the service corridor below ICU. Yes, he said. There had been. There was a brief silence on the line, the kind of silence that meant Mehdi was no longer guessing. Ayan asked if he should report it to the police. Mehdi told him not yet. He said that if this was what he thought it was, the records would be perfectly clean by the time anyone officially requested them. He told Ayan not to message anyone, not to write anything down, and not to watch people. Watch routines, Mehdi said, and don't let them know you're afraid. Ayan asked if he was coming. Mehdi looked into the darkness and answered quietly, I'm already on my way. Before dawn, Mehdi arrived in Istanbul. There was nothing theatrical about him. No dramatic entrance, no loud declaration. He stepped out of the airport in a dark coat with a small travel bag, got into a taxi, and told the driver to take him to Ravenna Memorial Hospital. On the way there, Ayan sent him one message. It said that the old wing lights had come on again at 11:40, and the waste elevator had been used after midnight. Mehdi replied with only one line. Don't send names, send routines. By morning, they met in the hospital cafeteria. Ayan looked exhausted, tense, and barely holding himself together. Mehdi sat across from him and listened while Ayan explained that patients were coming in recoverable, then suddenly declining on paper, while families were delayed, files were altered, and deaths were being wrapped in neat medical language. Mehdi asked how many. Ayan said he had noticed 3 in the last month, maybe more. Mehdi said quietly, the dead are never the beginning. They're the visible part. Then he asked who was trusted most in the building. Ayan answered immediately, Adrian Vale. Everyone respected him. Mehdi nodded once and said that a man like that was either innocent or protected by his own reputation. That day, Mehdi did what police would not have done. He did not start by interrogating suspects. He did not chase rumors. He walked through the hospital like a visitor and studied the building itself. He watched which elevators moved after midnight and which ones remained idle. He noted which staff used key cards and which were waved through by habit. He checked cameras, corridor paint, ventilation noise, and the subtle difference between a wing that was abandoned and a wing that only pretended to be. He found a maintenance board that listed backup generator tests every Thursday at 11:40 p.m., the same night all 3 suspicious deaths had occurred. In the records archive, he did not study the emotional details of the cases. He studied access behavior, the same post-mortem edits, the same delayed family notifications, the same altered consent fields, the same terminal activity tied to inactive surgical access. He murmured that this was not chaos. Chaos made mistakes. This was routine. By evening, Mehdi had gone down into the parking sublevel and examined the service corridor near Wing B. The faint diesel smell was still there. One of the old power lines had been rerouted. A waste transport cart appeared clean, but deep in the hinge of one axle was a dried trace of blood, hidden where no careless eye would notice it. A security guard approached him and said the area was restricted. Mehdi answered politely that someone should update the sign because renovations did not usually require cold storage transport after midnight. The guard stiffened. That tiny reaction told Mehdi everything he needed. The lower staff were afraid, which meant they knew enough to obey, but not enough to control anything. The real authority was higher up. That night, Inspector Elena Vargas at the City Police Department received an anonymous packet. Inside were access logs, timestamp discrepancies, and a hand-drawn map of Ravenna Memorial's sublevel. At the bottom was one typed sentence. Stop investigating causes of death. Start investigating who had permission to rewrite them. She followed the lead to an abandoned chapel attached to the sealed hospital wing. There, in the dim light, she found Mehdi studying old building plans. When she demanded to know who he was, Mehdi answered that he was someone who had arrived before the evidence disappeared. He showed her what others had missed: the pattern of emergency admissions, the use of patients with little family oversight, the late-night sedation, the altered chart entries after midnight, the sealed operating wing powered by backup test cycles. He told her this was not murder disguised as negligence. It was procurement disguised as medicine. Elena realized what he meant. Organ trafficking, but not the crude kind. Not black market surgery in some ruined warehouse. This was cleaner than that. More educated. More respectable. This was a hospital using its own structure, authority, and language to hide theft inside procedure. While Elena organized a quiet response, the pattern began again. A new patient arrived that night. A 31-year-old unidentified woman brought in after an overdose. She was unstable, but recoverable. Ayan checked her condition and immediately saw an unauthorized transplant prep alert appear on her chart. The same pattern. The same lie. He called Mehdi and told him they were doing it again. Mehdi asked which route. Ayan said ICU to sublevel through the waste corridor. Mehdi told him not to do anything heroic. Just delay them for 3 minutes. Then he hung up. Deep below the hospital, behind a sealed fire door, there was an immaculate underground operating theater. Bright lights, stainless steel, filtered air, a ghost room, hidden beneath a place people trusted. The woman lay prepped on the table. Mira Seth adjusted the anesthesia. Adrian Vale washed his hands in silence. Then the lights flickered. A screen went black, then came alive again. Security footage began to play. One victim after another appeared on the monitor, each wheeled into that same hidden room on nights that were officially marked inactive. The same corridor, the same doctors, the same routine. A resident stumbled back in shock. Vale ordered someone to turn it off. Then Mehdi's voice came over the overhead speaker. He said, "They should have changed the routine." No one moved. Mehdi's voice remained calm as he listed everything they had hidden. The falsified consent records, the scrubbed access logs, the threatened staff, the rewritten causes of death. And then he told them the one mistake they had made. They had trusted repetition, the same generator cycle, the same elevator interval, the same blind camera angle, the same hidden procedure, week after week, until it became habit. And habit always leaves a pattern. At that exact moment, the theater doors unlocked. Police stormed in. Elena ordered everyone not to move. Mira reached for a syringe, but Ayan shouted that she was trying to inject the patient. An officer tackled her before she could do it. Vale, even then, remained composed. He warned Elena that exposing the case the wrong way would destroy public trust in every hospital in the city. Elena answered that he had destroyed that trust the moment he turned patients into inventory. Later, on the rain-slick rooftop, with police lights flashing and helicopters circling at a distance, Vale made one last desperate attempt to escape. He shoved past an officer and ran across the helipad, only to stop when he saw someone waiting in the dark. Mehdi. Vale demanded to know who he was. Mehdi said that Vale spoke as though necessity made him innocent. Vale argued that people died waiting for organs, that one body could save many lives, that the world already decided whose life mattered through ministries, boards, insurance systems, and private influence. He claimed he had only removed the hypocrisy. Mehdi answered with quiet certainty. "No," he said, "you monetized it." Vale lunged at him in desperation. Mehdi moved once, not wildly, not brutally, just precisely. He turned Vale's momentum against him and sent him crashing onto the wet surface. By the time Vale looked up, Elena and armed officers had surrounded him. It was over. As the police pulled him away, Vale looked back and asked again who Mehdi really was. Mehdi answered, "I'm what arrives when respectable evil begins to believe it is untouchable." When Elena approached him afterward and asked how he had seen the truth before anyone else, Mehdi looked out over the city lights and said something she would never forget. He told her that police investigated violence and detectives investigated motive, but he investigated permission. He asked the question no one else asked. Who had been allowed to make this look normal? The next day, candles and flowers filled the hospital memorial hall. Families stood beside photographs of the dead. News screens reported arrests, suspensions, investigations, frozen accounts, and sealed sub-level facilities. Ayan stood in silence, still shaken, staring at the names of people who had almost been buried as paperwork. Elena told him he had done the right thing. Ayan admitted that he had almost done nothing. Elena answered that most people did nothing, and that was exactly why men like Adrian Vale survived for so long. As they spoke, reflected faintly in the glass near the memorial candles, stood Mehdi. He did not step forward. He did not stay. He was only there long enough to make sure the dead were no longer hidden behind medical language and administrative lies. Then the reflection disappeared, and somewhere beyond the hospital, beyond the city, beyond the reach of titles and white coats and polished reputations, Mehdi walked back into the rain. Because the worst evil never looks like a monster. It looks educated, licensed, admired. It speaks softly, wears clean gloves, and calls theft a process. That is why it survives. Not because it hides in darkness, but because it hides inside trust. And when evil learns to wear respectability,